The lawyer wouldn't look at me. That's how I knew. My name is Bradley Mason. I built Mason Freight from a single truck and a phone line 26 years ago. Yesterday, my son, Martin Mason, had 2 security guards walk me out of my own building, while his wife, Emily Mason, stood by the elevator, arms crossed, smiling like she'd finally won something. I didn't cry in that lobby. I saved it for the truck. Martin isn't my blood son. I raised him from the time he was 9 after his mother passed, before I remarried and built something new. I gave him my name on the company letterhead before I gave him anything else. Vice president at 24, full access at 30. I trusted him with the keys to everything I'd bled for. Emily married into the Mason name 6 years ago. Quiet, careful, the kind of quiet that watches more than it says. I thought she was shy. I was wrong. She was counting. The board meeting where they voted me out lasted 11 minutes. Martin read from a paper he didn't write. Health concerns, modernizing leadership. Emily sat behind him the whole time, hands folded, eyes on me like she was grading a test I'd already failed. I stood up, thanked them for their time, because that's what you do when you still have a shred of dignity left, and walked out with a banker's box full of 26 years. That night, my phone lit up. My grandkids, both of them, nearly identical texts, like someone had dictated the words. "Grandpa, why did you do this to Dad? Why did you do this to Dad?" I sat in my kitchen and read those messages 4 times. I hadn't done anything to their father, but somebody had spent a long time making sure they believed I had. I called my granddaughter. She didn't pick up. I called again, straight to voicemail. Something had been happening in that house for months, and I'd been too busy running a company to see it happening in my own family. The missed birthdays that weren't missed by accident. The way Emily always answered the landline before the kids could get to it. The way my son stopped meeting my eyes at Sunday dinners. Stopped almost a year ago now that I think back on it. I poured a coffee I didn't drink and turned on the 11 o'clock news out of habit. That's when I saw the second part of what they'd done to me. A reporter stood outside Mason Freight's loading yard. Behind her, 2 unmarked vehicles and a line of tape. Sources confirmed state auditors are reviewing financial irregularities dating back 3 years tied to the company's former CEO. My photo filled the screen. Not Martin's, mine. I muted the television and sat in the dark. 3 years of records don't get flagged overnight. Somebody built this. Somebody wanted my name attached to whatever rot was sitting inside those books, and they wanted it attached before I had a chance to defend myself. I thought about every strange thing I'd brushed off in the last year. Files that went missing from my office and turned up a week later in the wrong folder. A signature on a loan renewal I didn't remember approving. Emily handling just the paperwork for Martin because he was so overwhelmed. I let it happen because I trusted my son, and because a father doesn't audit his own child. I should have. At 1 a.m., my phone rang. Not the kids, an unknown number. A woman's voice, low, careful, like she was checking over her shoulder. "Mr. Mason, you don't know me, but I used to work in your accounting office. I need you to see something before they destroy it. Can you meet me tomorrow, somewhere nobody knows to look?" I asked her name. "Not on the phone," she said. "Just come alone. And Mr. Mason, whatever they told your grandkids about you, none of it is true. But what I have proves it's not true about you. It proves who it's actually true about." The line went dead before I could ask another question. I sat there holding a phone that had already disconnected, my heart going harder than it had in years. 26 years I built that company with my own 2 hands. I was not going to let my son's wife erase me from my grandkids' lives and hand federal investigators my name on a silver platter while she did it. I didn't know yet how deep this went. I didn't know yet that the woman calling me had a folder with Emily's handwriting on documents I supposedly signed myself. I didn't know that my own granddaughter had been coached line by line on what to say to me the next time we spoke. I only knew one thing sitting in that dark kitchen at 1 a.m. in the morning. They had made a mistake going after my name.
because a man who builds something out of nothing knows exactly how to take it back. If you've ever had someone smile at you while they were already planning to destroy you, stay with me on this one. Subscribe now, because Chapter 2 is where I find out exactly how far my daughter-in-law was willing to go and whose voice was really behind my grandkids' texts.
I drove out to a diner off Route 9, 40 minutes outside town, the kind of place with a gravel lot and a coffee machine older than my son. She said to come alone. I came alone, but I brought my late wife's old revolver in the glove box, just in case trust wasn't something I could afford anymore. She was already sitting in the back booth when I walked in, younger than I expected, maybe 35, a manila folder pressed flat under both hands like she was afraid it might get up and walk away. "Mr. Mason." She didn't offer a handshake. "My name's Carol. I did the books for Mason Freight for 11 years. I quit 4 months ago." "Why'd you quit?" "Because I was told to backdate a loan agreement, and when I asked whose signature was going on it, they said mine wasn't the problem, yours was." I sat down slow. My knees weren't what they used to be, but that wasn't why. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photocopies, loan renewals, vendor contracts, wire authorizations. My signature was on every single one, clean, confident, exactly how I signed my name. "I didn't sign these," I said. "I know, because I watched Amelie practice your signature for 2 weeks before the first one went out. She kept old checks of yours in a drawer in the finance office, used them like a workbook." My stomach turned over. Not shock. I'd already suspected something rotten. It was the specific picture of it. My daughter-in-law, alone in an office at night, tracing my name onto paper like a school kid copying homework, so she could hollow out my company and hand the wreckage to me with a bow on it. Why come to me now? Why not 4 months ago? Carol's jaw tightened. "Mr. Mason, 4 months ago it was just money moving around. Yesterday it became a federal case with your name on it. I've got 2 kids. I'm not going to prison protecting people who'd let an old man take the fall for them." She pointed to one wire transfer, dated 8 months back, $600,000, routed to a holding company I'd never heard of. "That one's got Martin's personal email in the approval chain, not yours, his." I stared at that email address a long time. Same last name as mine, same blood, I used to think, though I raised him, and I know that doesn't always mean the same thing. Does he know what she's doing, or is she running this alone and letting him think it's business as usual? Carol looked at me like the question hurt her to answer. "Mr. Mason, I think your son knows exactly what's happening. I think he decided a long time ago that it was easier to let his wife handle it than to stop her." I didn't say anything for a while. The waitress came by, refilled coffee neither of us was drinking, left again. "There's one more thing," Carol finally said. "The night before the board voted you out, Amelie met with 2 of your board members at a restaurant across town. I know because I was there with my sister 2 tables over. I didn't think anything of it until this week."
"Which 2? She said the names. One of them had sat on my board for 19 years, sat at my dinner table more times than I could count, held my grandson at his christening. Something cold settled into my chest, the kind of cold that doesn't come from fear. It comes from finally understanding the shape of a thing you'd been circling for months without seeing clearly. "I need copies of all of this," I said, "and I need you to tell me you'll say this to a lawyer if it comes to that." Carol hesitated, and for a second I thought she'd back out right there in that booth. Then she nodded. "I kept the originals in a safe deposit box. These are copies. I'm not doing this for free, Mr. Mason. I want protection. I want it in writing that none of this comes back on me." "You'll have it," I said, "whatever it takes." I drove home with that folder on the passenger seat like it was something alive. Halfway back, my phone buzzed. A text from my granddaughter, the first one in 3 days that didn't read like it came from somebody else's mouth. "Grandpa, Mom said you're not allowed to pick me up from school anymore. Is that true? I pulled the truck onto the shoulder and read it twice. 12 years old and already being used as a wall between me and the truth. I texted back, I would never stop wanting to see you. Whatever they told you about me, we'll talk about it soon, I promise. She didn't respond. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, like someone else had walked into the room and she'd put the phone down fast. That's when it hit me harder than the folder ever could. This wasn't just about money or the company anymore. Amelie wasn't just stealing from me. She was rewriting me in my own grandchildren's minds, one small lie at a time, making sure that by the time I fought back, they wouldn't even want me to win. I sat on that shoulder a long time, engine running, folder on the seat, phone gone quiet in my hand. Whatever Carol had given me tonight was only the beginning. There was a board member I'd trusted for 19 years, sitting across a dinner table with Amelie the night before my own son threw me out of the company I'd built. And I still didn't know the one thing that mattered most. How far my son had let this go before he decided his father was the one who had to disappear. 19 years. That's how long Harold Weiss sat on my board. I gave him his first seat when Mason Freight had 4 trucks and a rented lot. I stood up at his daughter's wedding. I sat with him in a hospital waiting room the night his wife had her heart attack. 19 years. And Carol told me he'd had dinner with my daughter-in-law the night before my own son had me walked out by security. I decided I wasn't going to call him. I was going to look him in the eye. I found him at his lake house 2 hours north, the place he retires to every summer. He answered the door in a cardigan, coffee mug in hand, and for half a second his face did something honest, fear, before he caught it and smoothed it into a smile. "Bradley, this is a surprise." "Is it?" I said. "I heard you had dinner with Amelie the night before the board meeting." His smile didn't move, but his knuckles went white around that mug. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Harold, 19 years. Don't do this to me now." He stepped back and let me in. We sat in his kitchen, and he finally talked, though not all of it. I could tell even then he was holding something back, choosing his words like a man walking across ice. Amelie had come to him months earlier with a story that I was making decisions that put the company at risk, that Martin needed the board's support to step in and protect what you built. He said the whole board meeting felt orchestrated before it started, like the outcome was decided the moment she walked into the room. "I should have called you first," Harold said, not looking at me. "I should have asked you myself instead of going along with it." "Why didn't you?" He didn't answer that one, just shook his head and said he was sorry, in a voice that sounded like it was carrying more weight than one bad vote should. I didn't push him that day. Something in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes told me there was a reason underneath the reason, and that whatever it was, it scared him more than losing my friendship did. I wrote down what he gave me and let it go, for now. I drove straight to my daughter Ava's place instead of going home. Ava Mason, 34, a nurse, the only one of my kids who still called every Sunday without fail. I told her what I knew so far, that something had been orchestrated, that Harold was hiding something, that Amelie had clearly been working the board for months before that meeting ever happened. "Does Martin know you're looking into this?" Ava asked. "No, nobody knows. Harold, Carol, you. That's it." Ava was quiet a moment, then said something that changed the whole shape of what came next. "Dad, 2 weeks ago, Amelie called me. She asked me to sign something, paperwork about your care, she said, in case you ever needed help managing your affairs. I almost signed it. Something felt off, so I didn't. But she wanted my name right next to yours.
She wanted the family to look united behind the idea that you couldn't be trusted to run your own life. The floor tilted a little under that one. It wasn't enough for Amelie to take the company. She was building something bigger, a paper trail meant to make it look like the whole family agreed I couldn't be trusted to run my own life. "She's not just trying to take the company, Ava," I said. "She's trying to take all of it, my name, my grandkids, and eventually my right to make decisions about my own life." Ava's voice was steadier than mine. "Then let's find out how she's doing it, because a woman with nothing to hide doesn't need this many people staying quiet." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at her kitchen table going back over every conversation, every strange silence, every board member who wouldn't quite meet my eyes anymore. Harold's fear kept coming back to me. Regina Voss, another name on that board, kept coming back to me too. She'd looked sick the last time I saw her at a company function, months before any of this started. I didn't know yet that fear, not paperwork, was the real thing holding that board together. I didn't know yet what Amelie had on Harold, or that Regina was carrying something heavier than a bad vote too. But I was starting to understand that whatever this was, it went a lot deeper than money.
2 days after Ava told me about the paperwork Amelie tried to get her to sign, a second board member called me. Not Harold, someone I didn't expect at all. Regina Voss, 15 years on my board, a woman who never missed a meeting, never raised her voice, always the last one to leave a room because she actually read every page before she voted. She called at 6 in the morning before I'd even made coffee, and her voice wasn't steady. "Bradley, I need to see you today. Not on the phone, today." We met behind a closed hardware store on the edge of town, parked in her car because she said she didn't trust her own house right now. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "I voted to remove you," she said before I could get a word out. "I need you to know I hated every second of it." "Then why'd you do it?" She didn't answer right away. Her hands stayed locked on the wheel even with the engine off. 6 months ago, Amelie came to my office. She knew about my son, about the accident 3 years ago, the one that never made the papers because we paid to keep it quiet. She had photographs, messages, enough to end my career and put my son back in a courtroom. My chest went tight. "She threatened you?" "Not directly. She never does it directly. She just mentioned it would be a shame if certain things became public, then asked how I'd be voting for the leadership transition. That was the whole conversation. I understood exactly what she meant." I sat with that a moment, the shape of the last 6 months rearranging itself in my head. Amelie hadn't spent all that time manufacturing sympathy and soft stories about my health because she needed to convince everyone I was unfit. That story was for the ones who could be fooled honestly, for the ones who actually knew me, the ones who'd have asked hard questions. She didn't bother convincing them of anything. She found what they were afraid of losing and pointed it straight at them. "Harold," I said slowly, "is that why he folded so fast?" Regina's face answered before her mouth did. "His daughter, the one that got married last spring. Amelie knows something about that marriage Harold would do anything to keep buried. I don't know the details. I know he went pale the one time I brought it up." I thought about Harold in his kitchen, hands shaking, apologizing to me like a man carrying something heavier than one bad vote. He hadn't been careless or naive. He'd been cornered, same as Regina, and the fear was still working on him after he'd decided to help me. "How many of you?" I asked. "How many on that board did she get to like this?" Regina turned to look at me straight on finally. "I don't know for certain. I know it's more than 2. Bradley,
This isn't a woman who got greedy and made a few bad calls. This is someone who spent a long time finding out exactly what each of us was most afraid of losing: careers, families, freedom, and built her leadership vote out of that fear, one board member at a time.
Something shifted in my chest hearing that. Not shock anymore. Something colder and more useful. Anger with a plan attached to it. "What do you want to do about it?" I asked her. "I want out," Regina said. "I want to stop being afraid of a woman half my age who married into a company she didn't build. But I can't do that alone. If I go against her without protection, she uses what she has on me and I lose everything anyway, just faster." "Then don't go alone. Give me what you know, on record, and I'll get it to people who can actually protect you. A lawyer. The state's already looking at the company. This only strengthens that." Regina's hands finally came off the wheel. "There's a man named Grady Fenwick. He's not on the board. He's a private accountant Amelie brought in 8 months ago, officially to modernize our reporting. I don't think Amelie dug up what she has on people herself. I think Fenwick did it and handed it to her like a set of keys." The name meant nothing to me yet. It would mean everything by the end of the week. I left Regina with a promise and the same lawyer's number Carol had already agreed to call, and drove home turning one thought over and over. Amelie hadn't done any of this alone. She had help. Someone whose entire job was finding exactly where people were weakest and handing her the leverage to use it. That night, Ava called. Her voice had a shake in it I hadn't heard since her mother's funeral. "Dad, someone came to the hospital today, asked for me by name at the nurse's station, left an envelope with the desk clerk, and walked out before anyone could stop him." "What was in it?" "A photo of you and me at the diner with Carol, time-stamped, and a note. It just said, 'Tell your father to stop asking questions, or the next envelope goes to the state board reviewing your nursing license.'" I gripped the phone so hard my hand ached. They didn't have anything real on Ava, I knew that much, but that was never the point. The point was proving they could reach her at all, that nobody I loved was outside their sightline, and that the cost of me continuing to dig wasn't going to land on me. It was going to land on my kids. "Ava, listen to me. I need you to be careful, but I need you not to stop either. That's exactly what they want, for all of us to go quiet." "I know, Dad. I'm scared, but I'm not backing down." I hung up and sat alone in the dark a long time, the same chair I'd sat in the night this all started. Fenwick's name sat in my head like a splinter under skin. Whoever he wasn't just an accountant modernizing spreadsheets. He was the machine behind Amelie's leverage, the one finding the fear and loading it like a weapon. If I wanted to end this cleanly, exposing Amelie wasn't going to be enough. I had to find Fenwick first. I had to find out exactly what he had on the rest of that board before he decided to send one more envelope to someone I couldn't afford to lose. Finding Fenwick took 3 days and a favor from an old trucking contact who still had friends in half the county clerk's offices in the state. Turned out, Grady Fenwick didn't officially work for Mason Freight at all. He was contracted through a shell consulting firm registered to an address that was just a mailbox at a UPS store 2 towns over. Whatever he was doing for Amelie, he was doing it in a way that left no clean line back to her name. I didn't confront him. Men like that don't fold from a conversation. I gave everything I had: Carol's folder, Harold's account, Regina's statement about the blackmail, the wire transfer with Martin's email in the approval chain, and Fenwick's shell company registration to the lawyer Carol had already agreed to work with. He brought in a forensic accountant of his own. Within a week,
They'd traced 11 separate consulting fees from Mason Freight to accounts connected to Fenwick, 4 of them paid out within days of a board member changing their vote. That was the piece that mattered. Not forged paperwork, not sympathy stories about my health, a documented, time-stamped pattern of a man being paid to dig up leverage on people, followed by those same people falling in line right when Amelie needed them to. The state investigators reviewing the company's finances didn't need much convincing once that pattern was in front of them. My name came off the file within 2 weeks. Harold's didn't. I asked for one thing before any of it became public: a meeting. Not a boardroom performance, just the 2 of us. He met me at the old lot where the first truck used to park, back before we ever had an office with his name on the door, too. He looked thinner than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Did you know," I asked him, "the whole time, did you know what she was doing?" Martin didn't look away, which was almost worse than if he had. "Not at first. Then I did, and I told myself it wasn't my business to stop her, that she was protecting the company, protecting me." His voice cracked. "I let her tell our kids things about you that weren't true because it was easier than telling her no." "You let her build a version of me for my own grandchildren that doesn't exist." "I know." He said it quiet, like it cost him something to admit out loud. "I don't know how to fix that." I didn't have an answer for him that night. Some things don't get fixed with one conversation in an empty parking lot. But I told him the truth, because he'd earned at least that much from me over 30 years, whatever else he'd done. "You start by telling them yourself, not me, you. And you keep telling them the truth every single day until it outweighs everything she told them first." Amelie wasn't in that parking lot. She was already gone by the time the state's findings went public, cleared out a joint account, put the house on the market, and was reportedly staying with family 2 states away by the time subpoenas started going out. Fenwick's shell company dissolved within a month, though the money trail didn't disappear with it. Investigators were still working through where all 11 payments actually ended up. The board reinstated me as chairman in a vote that took considerably less than 11 minutes. Harold couldn't look at me during it, and I let that sit between us for now. Regina sat straight through the whole thing, met my eyes, and nodded once. That was enough. I picked my granddaughter up from school 3 weeks later. Harold had told her, in his own words this time, that Grandpa hadn't done any of the things she'd been told. She didn't run to me the way she used to. She stood by the car a moment, studying my face like she was deciding whether to trust it. Then she got in. "Are you still mad at me?" I asked her. "I was never mad at you. Not for 1 second." We didn't talk about the rest of it on that drive. Some things take longer than a car ride to repair. But she reached over halfway home and put her hand on my arm, and I realized that was its own kind of victory. Quieter than a board vote, but it meant more than all of them. I built Mason Freight out of a single truck and a phone line. I thought for a long time that was the thing I was proudest of building. I was wrong. The thing worth fighting for was never the company. It was making sure my name still meant something to the people who mattered long after everyone else had finished deciding what to do with it.